Deborah had always been a woman who sought balance in her life. Since she was young, she had learned to value the stability and security that a committed relationship could offer. With Ricardo, her husband, she had built a life that, at first glance, seemed perfect: a cozy home, mutual friends, and even plans to have children. However, as the years went by, the initial passion began to dissipate, giving way to routine and monotony. The dilemma began to form slowly, like a shadow creeping behind their daily interactions. What had once been a relationship full of excitement now seemed marked by superficial conversations and moments of awkward silence. Deborah felt trapped in a repetitive cycle, where the days blurred together and emotions were almost non-existent. She yearned for something more, something that would make her feel alive again. It was in this context that Lucas entered the picture. Ricardo's younger brother was everything Deborah lacked in her marriage: young, vibrant, and full of dreams. The first time he looked at her with that mischievous smile during a family dinner, Deborah felt a rush of adrenaline course through her body. It was a look that promised adventure and freedom, something she hadn't experienced in years. As the family gatherings became more frequent, the tension between them grew. The subtle flirting quickly turned into something more intense. Every casual touch during conversations, every shared laugh seemed to ignite a spark within her. Deborah knew she was crossing a dangerous line, but the attraction was undeniable. Passion was like an addiction. The more she allowed herself to feel it, the harder it was to resist. The internal conflict began to consume Deborah. She loved Ricardo and valued what they had built together, but at the same time, Lucas awakened feelings in her that she thought had been dormant forever. Nights became an emotional battlefield. While trying to sleep beside a sleeping Ricardo, her mind was filled with thoughts of Lucas. The guilt was overwhelming. Deborah tried to justify her feelings to herself. It's just harmless flirting, she would think. I'm not doing anything serious. But as the secret meetings became more frequent and the moments alone with Lucas grew more intense, that justification began to crumble. She found herself in awkward situations, moments when she was with Ricardo but couldn't stop thinking about Lucas, instances when her phone buzzed with messages from him, and her heart raced with both excitement and fear. The line between right and wrong began to blur. Deborah also started to notice how Lucas treated her differently than Ricardo. He listened to her attentively, asked questions about her dreams and desires, something she missed in her relationship with her husband. This attention made Deborah feel valued and desired again, feelings that had disappeared from her daily life. But there were moments when she paused to reflect on the consequences of her action. She remembered the happy times she had shared with Ricardo, the romantic trips, the spontaneous laughter, and the genuine love that had always existed between them. The weight of betrayal began to bear down on her shoulders like an immense anchor. She knew she was on the verge of doing something irreversible. The decision to cheat or not became a psychological torment for Deborah. On some nights, as she stared at the ceiling while lying next to a sleeping Ricardo, she thought about the promises made during their wedding, in sickness and in health, for better or for worse. The guilt consumed her. She wanted to remain faithful to her husband, but at the same time, she felt drawn to Lucas like never before. Conversations with friends didn't help either. Some encouraged her to live her life, while others warned her about the devastating consequences of betrayal. "You don't want to be that woman," one friend had said, referring to infamous stories of infidelity in their community. Those words echoed in Deborah's mind as a constant warning. One night, after a family dinner where Lucas was present, Deborah decided to step outside to get some fresh air in the backyard of her in-laws' house. The starry sky above and the city lights twinkling in the distance gave her a fleeting sense of peace. As she gazed at the stars, Lucas appeared by her side. "Are you okay?" he asked softly. "I just need a moment to think," Deborah replied, unable to articulate the emotional turmoil she was experiencing. Lucas stepped closer and said, "I don't want to pressure you, but I feel an incredible connection between us." His words were like an electric shock. Deborah felt her heart race again. It was tempting to give in to that impulse, to the intense feelings growing between them, but she knew it could destroy everything she had built with Ricardo. I don't know if this is right," Deborah replied hesitantly. "Sometimes we need to take risks to find our happiness," Lucas said, sincerity shining in his eyes. Those words etched themselves in Deborah's mind as she battled her inner demon. The idea of pursuing her own happiness felt selfish when she considered the consequences for Ricardo and their family. As the days passed, the messages exchanged between Deborah and Lucas grew more intense. Each word was laden with repressed desire and unspoken promises. They talked about everything, their dreams, their insecurities, but there was always an undeniable subtext, the burning attraction between them. Deborah began to question her own identity. Who was she, really? A faithful wife or a woman craving freedom? The emotional pressure became unbearable, Every encounter with Lucas felt like a dance between right and wrong. Finally, the day came when everything boiled over. During a walk in the park where they often went when they were younger, Lucas held her hand as they strolled beneath blooming spring trees. His touch sent electric waves through her body. It was in that pivotal moment that Deborah made her decision. "I can't keep doing this," she said abruptly as they stopped in a secluded corner of the park. "You don't have to decide now," Lucas responded, trying to calm her. But Deborah already knew the path she wanted to take, even though she was fully aware of the devastating consequences. Her heart was a confusing mix of love for Ricardo and passion for Lucas. Each emotion fought for dominance in her life. "I need to figure out what I really want," she said at last, looking into his eyes with determination. And so began a vicious cycle. Every time she tried to resist the temptation of betrayal, she found herself drawn even closer to Lucas. Their conversations became increasingly intimate. Their gazes, laden with desire, seemed to promise something impossible to resist. The internal battle continued until it culminated in that fateful night at her in-laws' house, when Helena discovered the messages on her phone, a devastating revelation for everyone involved. The exposed truth brought to light all the repressed emotions and internal conflicts, finally erupting into the open. Deborah realized in that critical moment that decisions made in weakness could have profound repercussions on the lives of those around us, especially when they involve true love versus fleeting desire. Now alone after that emotional storm, reflecting on her past choices as she walked along a deserted beach, Deborah finally understood. The lessons learned through pain would shape her future decisions. She now had a new perspective on love and relationship. Renewed hope began to blossom within her. And so, a new chapter in her life began, a chapter filled not only with challenges but also with renewed hope. The future remained uncertain, but now she was determined to face any emotional storm that lay ahead. In the days following the scandal's revelation, Deborah faced an overwhelming wave of conflicting emotions as she tried to navigate the new reality imposed by her exposed betrayal. Every step outside the house felt heavy. Curious glances followed her through the streets of the small town where everyone knew everyone, where rumors spread like wildfire. She started frequenting different places in an attempt to avoid familiar faces, remote cafes where no one knew who she was or the story that now shadowed her life. But even in these new spaces, memories of the past lingered. Shared laughter with mutual friends now echoed as distant reminders of what once was before the scandal. Conversations with friends became difficult. Many were divided between supporting Ricardo or trying to understand her reasons for the betrayal. Some friends tried to comfort her, saying, "Everyone makes mistakes," while others simply avoided the topic, fearing the judgment it might bring. Loneliness became her constant companion during those dark days. The nights were long and filled with uncertainties about the future, about who she truly was without the roles imposed by marriage or the forbidden romance with Lucas. That's when she decided to seek professional help to cope with the emotional weight she had been carrying for months. Booking an appointment with a therapist was an important step in the right direction. Someone neutral could help her explore her feelings without external judgments or biases influencing her personal decisions. During her weekly therapy session, Deborah began unraveling the complex layers of her psyche. Deep conversations about societal expectations versus personal desires revealed painful truths about who she really was. She realized how much she had always feared abandonment, afraid of losing important people in her life if she made unpopular decisions. This realization opened new horizons for her to better understand her motivations throughout that tumultuous phase. Among so many reflections, another crucial question emerged. Could broken bonds ever truly be rebuilt? Could there be genuine forgiveness, for herself and for those affected by the betrayal? These questions lingered constantly in her mind as she sought answers during long, solitary walks along the beach. The sound of waves crashing against the shore brought a temporary sense of inner peace, but it couldn't entirely erase the painful memories of the past few months. One sunny morning, after several weeks of therapy, Deborah finally mustered the courage to reach out to Ricardo. She didn't want to force anything or create unrealistic expectations. She simply wanted to clarify a few important points before moving forward. With trembling hands, she typed a simple message apologizing sincerely for the pain she had caused. To her surprise, Ricardo replied almost immediately, agreeing to meet her at a nearby cafe they used to frequent before the scandal. The meeting was tense from the start. Both were nervous but eager at the same time. They talked about everything, from their lives apart to their individual personal ambitions. Ricardo revealed that he had been coping with his pain by immersing himself in work. He had thrown himself into his job as a way to escape the harsh reality of betrayal. "I just want to understand why," he said, looking into her eyes with deep sadness reflected in them. "What was missing between us?" His words hit Deborah like a punch to the gut. She knew exactly what the underlying issues in their relationship had been. Problems that had been ignored for too long due to the exhausting daily routine. I felt alone, she finally confessed after hesitating for a few seconds. I missed the emotional connection. You were so focused on work. I got lost in the process. Ricardo nodded slowly as he absorbed her words. He also admitted to neglecting important aspects of their relationship because of external pressures imposed by daily life. At that critical moment, both realized how easy it was to let small problems grow into insurmountable barriers. The conversation flowed naturally between them, reminiscing about good times while addressing the ghosts of the past. But as they shared their personal experiences since the events, it became clear to both of them that there was still a lingering resentment between them. They decided to take another step back, maintaining the emotional distance necessary before making any realistic attempt to rebuild something together. Deborah realized then how much time it might take to rebuild broken relationships, especially when they involved deep feelings like true love versus fleeting desire. And so, a new cycle began in her life, one filled not only with challenges but also with renewed opportunities. With that in mind, she decided to continue exploring new creative avenues while seeking to better understand who she truly was without relying on others for validation. Thus began another exciting chapter in her personal journey of self-discovery, a chapter filled with renewed hope in the face of the adversities she had faced before. The future remained uncertain, but now she was determined to face any emotional storm ahead with resilience. Meanwhile, Lucas remained present in her life through social media. The messages between them had become less frequent since Deborah's decisive meeting with Ricardo. Still, there was something inexplicable that connected them. Perhaps it was the intense bond forged during the months they had spent together. One evening, after returning from therapy, Deborah decided to send a simple message asking how Lucas was coping with everything. To her surprise, Lucas replied quickly, saying he was working hard on a new painting inspired by the experiences they had shared recently. This piqued her curiosity once again. Perhaps it was time to reconnect in person? Yet doubts lingered about her true feelings. The dilemma persisted as she navigated the emotional complexities involved in this intricate web of love. And so, they continued on this uncertain journey into the unknown, seeking answers both within themselves and outside. Their story was far from over. Each chapter would unveil new, valuable lessons about true love versus fleeting desire. This narrative served as a poignant reminder of the complexities of love and familial relationships, a tale filled with emotional missteps and difficult choices that shape our lives forever.